She's #1 at being dumb, the new face of the DNC. Gather round, cause that's our Jazzy.
Jasmine Crockett's got another hot take. No blacks and whites on a wedding cake. The Democrats' new chosen one, Jasmine Crockett, is in the news again for an old clip where she attacked Florida Rep. Byron Donalds for marrying a white woman.
It all started with a scandal that hit harder than anyone expected. A clip from the past resurfaced, showing Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett going after Florida Representative Byron Donalds. But it wasn't about policy, taxes, or even the usual back and forth we see in Washington. No, this was personal. She mocked him for marrying a white woman, hinting that his marriage somehow stripped him of his black identity. Think about that, an elected official dragging someone's family choices into the public spotlight.
Literally, it's because you married a white woman and so you think that that whitewashed you.
That's not very woke, is it? Of course, Crockett isn't the only Democrat who's opposed to interracial marriage, or else more Democrats would have voted for this one. Racist!
It wasn't just messy politics. It was a full-on racial jab that shocked even people who normally tune out of these debates. The moment that clip started circulating, it painted Crockett as the new loud voice of the Democratic Party, one who doesn't hold back and isn't afraid of throwing out lines that ignite controversy. But this time, the backlash was fierce. Many called her comments outdated and divisive, the kind of rhetoric that creates more hate than solutions. And while some of her supporters rushed to defend her, the reaction from across the political spectrum was loud. People wanted answers. By the way, before we continue, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us grow and share more intriguing stories. Now, let's continue. The tension around that old clip set the stage for what was about to become one of the most brutal on-air clashes. Because once those words reached the ears of Greg Gutfeld, it was only a matter of time before fireworks exploded live on television. And when the showdown finally happened, it wasn't a debate, it was a demolition.
Tyrus, I go to you for no particular reason. Is she making any point there?
Like this makes me wish my mom made different father choices. Because we all get sucked into this. Like, this is... If you're gonna talk about black history, at least know it. This is... At least know it.
The moment Jasmine Crockett brought her high-energy theatrics onto live TV, Greg Gutfeld came in swinging with sarcasm, sharp enough to slice steel. She had her rehearsed lines, her dramatic pauses, her fiery tone, but none of it landed. Instead, Gutfeld flipped her words back at her with cold precision, pointing out just how absurd her arguments sounded. The audience wasn't quiet either. They laughed, they cheered, they roared as Crockett stumbled to recover, clearly unprepared for the heat. What was supposed to be another Crockett moment of defiance turned into something completely different. Greg didn't play along like the mainstream outlets that often let her words slide. He treated her like an opponent in the ring, cutting through her talking points with brutal one-liners. And as Crockett tried to fight back, she found herself boxed into corners she couldn't escape from. It was less of a debate and more like watching someone try to juggle fire while Greg calmly handed her more torches. Social media caught on instantly. Clips of the exchange exploded across timelines, and people couldn't stop sharing how Gutfeld turned what looked like Crockett's stage into his own arena. She came armed with drama, but he came armed with a flamethrower. And in that moment, it was clear this wasn't just another political spat. This was a live dismantling that left Crockett exposed and struggling. As the clash played out, what stood out most was Crockett's style. She wasn't bringing serious policy arguments or solutions. Instead, she leaned on what she's best known for: loud, dramatic performances designed to go viral. Crockett has built a reputation on fiery rants, exaggerated expressions, and soundbites tailor-made for TikTok. In committees, she thrives on chaos. often shouting over others and throwing out buzzwords that get clipped for social media, rather than working toward actual legislative wins. Greg, Gutfeld, and Tyrus weren't buying it. They called her out as more of a performer than a politician. Instead of addressing issues with depth, she delivered what looked like monologues crafted not for Congress, but for likes, shares, and applause. To her fan base, it might look like fighting for justice. But to everyone else, as the panel pointed out, it just looked like noise. And this time, the noise fell flat. Tyrus especially didn't hold back, shaking his head and saying she didn't even know the history she was trying to use as a weapon. His frustration spilled out, mocking her overconfidence and pointing out that if she wanted to drag history into the conversation, she should at least come prepared with real facts. Instead, Crockett walked straight into the lion's den with nothing but theatrics. And the result? She was outmatched on every level, turning her performance into a cautionary tale rather than a victory. Then came the moment that really set people off Crockett's take on immigration and farming. She argued that America needs immigrants because, in her words, ain't none of y'all trying to go and farm right now. She even dragged cotton picking into the conversation, claiming no one in modern America would ever do that kind of work. The panel froze for a second, stunned at what they just heard. And then, the backlash hit. Greg Gutfeld lit into her, mocking how out of touch the comment was. He reminded viewers that America has some of the best farmers in the world, people who take pride in agriculture and feed the nation.
But it goes back to, that was 45 seconds of some of the, like, Kamala, you good right now. That was some of the dumbest I ever heard in my life. Here's the thing. This goes back to what we talked about earlier. They never have a solution. Just listen to your dumbass talk. You want to talk about agriculture? Why don't you fix the lottery? Why don't you make it easier for people who want to come into this country to work in agriculture and equitation and factories? Get rid of the lottery. Open it up. Talk to the president. Like, hey, we got a plan. We want to make it easier for people who can vet and come in and work in this country. Come up with an idea. Besides, any of y'all want to pick cotton? We're like, we're in suits in the middle of the Midwest. Why would we pick cotton? It's like the extreme stupidness of what she speaks. I'm so angry right now.
Tyrus chimed in too, ridiculing the idea that this was somehow a serious argument, calling it one of the dumbest statements he'd ever heard on air. They weren't just irritated, they were furious. For them, this wasn't about making a point on immigration. It was Crockett throwing out wild lines to sound bold without offering a single real solution. The reaction online was just as heated. Viewers tore apart her cotton remark, saying it wasn't just offensive, it was reckless. Instead of sparking meaningful conversation about policy, Crockett turned the discussion into a spectacle. And in doing so, she handed Greg and his panel the perfect chance to dismantle her logic piece by piece, showing that her big statements had no real backbone to stand on. Greg didn't stop at the cotton remarks. He went deeper, pulling apart the contradictions in Crockett's entire message. On one hand, she preaches unity, love, and justice. But in the very next breath, she throws out divisive lines about race and identity that pit people against each other. Greg held up that mirror and exposed the cracks. It wasn't just what she said, it was the hypocrisy behind it. And then came the part that stung the most. He reminded everyone of her record, or rather, the lack of one. For all the shouting, the viral clapbacks, the dramatic speeches that flood social media, Crockett hasn't really accomplished anything in office. No landmark bills, no significant legislative wins, nothing concrete to point to. Just a collection of fiery soundbites designed to trend. To Greg, this was the heart of the problem. She wasn't acting like a leader, she was acting like a brand. The political version of a reality TV contestant, always ready with drama but never with substance. And while that might win her followers and applause online, Greg cut through the noise by making it clear, none of it moves the country forward. It was a brutal reality check, the kind that leaves no room for escape, because this wasn't just about words, it was about proof, and she didn't have any to show. The audience could feel the shift. What started as Crockett's attempt to dominate the spotlight quickly turned into Greg's stage. Every exaggerated hand wave, every dramatic pause, every buzzword she tossed out, he flipped into a punchline. Instead of building her argument, she ended up feeding his. And the crowd loved it. Laughter broke out again and again, not at his expense, but at hers. Tyrus added fuel to the fire, saying Crockett was turning into the face of her party, and not in a good way. He compared her antics to a comedy act, pointing out that even fellow panelists didn't know what the hell she was talking about. They highlighted how out of touch her farming comments were, reminding her that farming is essential, not some outdated relic of the past. As Tyrus put it, America's farmers aren't living in the 1800s. They use modern technology, and they take pride in their work. What made it worse was Crockett's confidence. She walked away from her performance, believing she had knocked it out of the park. But Greg and his team showed the opposite. To them, she looked lost, confused, and completely disconnected from reality. That contrast, her inflated self-image versus the wreckage left behind, turned the moment into pure political theater. And for the audience, it was both shocking and entertaining, like watching someone attempt a high-wire act without a safety net. And then came the cultural double standards, the part that had Tyrus fired up.
She's so rotten, she wants migrants picking cotton. We present to you Democratic Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, who made this shocking argument why America needs immigrants. Roll it, Alfred.
So I had to go around the country and educate people about what immigrants do for this country, or the fact that we are a country of immigrants.
Right.
The fact is, ain't none of y'all trying to go and farm right now. Okay, so I'm lying. Raise your hands.
Especially when the wheels fall off.
You're not. We done picking cotton. We are. You can't pay us enough.
He pointed out how certain comments are excused depending on who says them. If a white politician had made the same remarks Crockett did, especially about race or marriage, they would have been thrown off the show instantly. No questions asked. But when Crockett said it, her defenders brushed it off, acting like it was nothing more than passion. Tyrus wasn't having it. He said straight up that people in his own community should be holding her accountable. If a fellow black man had said something that divisive, he'd want him off the stage too. He wasn't just criticizing her words, he was exposing a culture that lets figures like Crockett slide while demanding strict standards from everyone else. Meanwhile, Crockett's defenders rushed in fast. They screamed racism, sexism, bigotry, every shield they could find. They claimed all criticism of her was rooted in hate rather than substance. But Greg cut through that noise with his usual sharp edge. He made it clear, criticism isn't hate, it's accountability. If you can't handle being called out, politics might not be the place for you. The panel's message was blunt. No one gets a free pass. If Crockett wanted to play in the national spotlight, then she had to answer for what she said. And this time, there was no escaping the heat. Social media turned the clash into a spectacle of its own. Memes flooded the internet within hours. One of the most shared showed Greg towering over a cartoon version of Crockett with the caption, "Sit down and learn something." Others replayed the segment like it was a UFC knockout, slowing down every moment. Greg landed a verbal blow while Crockett scrambled to recover. And the irony? Crockett had walked into this mess completely on her own. There wasn't a trap, no setup, no ambush. She stepped up to the mic full of confidence, ready to unleash her usual zingers. But instead of applause, she found herself buried under the weight of her own words.
Made, she's getting to be the face of that party.
I know, thanks to your show.
Yeah.
I don't know what's more popular, this or The View on Gutfeld. But a couple of things. Did you see, at first I thought she was doing it for comedic purposes, but you watch back, nobody had a response. They didn't know what the hell she was talking about. And she's like, oh, really? Farming? Yes, it's called eating, farming. America's got the best farmers in the world. There's glory in doing it. People do it, and the people don't do it by hand anymore. This isn't 1820. So I was just stunned by what she's saying. But the weird thing is, she probably left that room thinking she knocked it out of the park. And I don't think that anyone can stop her from being the face of the party, except Bernie Sanders, who's 111 years old, talking about oligarchs.
The crowd inside the studio didn't hold back either. Every sarcastic jab from Greg hit like a confetti cannon. Laughter erupted, and the more Crockett tried to regain control, the more she slipped. It was secondhand embarrassment in real time. What was supposed to be her big moment of strength turned into a very public unraveling. And Greg, he didn't even look like he was breaking a sweat. He sat back with that smug grin, roasting her without raising his voice, calmly dismantling her argument as if he'd done it 1,000 times before. The more Crockett spun her talking points, the more obvious it became she had nothing solid to stand on. This wasn't just a stumble, it was a collapse broadcast live for everyone to see. By this point, Crockett's attempts to fight back looked desperate. She hurled out words like systemic oppression and voice of the people, hoping the big phrases would win her some ground, but they bounced right off Greg's calm, cutting sarcasm. It was like watching someone yell at a brick wall that just smirked back. She tried to raise her volume, but volume didn't matter. Her arguments had holes big enough for everyone to see. Greg didn't need to shout. His calmness made it sting even more, almost like customer service with a brutal edge. "Thank you for your outrage. Please hold while we transfer you to someone who cares." He wasn't rattled. He wasn't even sweating. It looked like he was already planning his lunch while Crockett spiraled in circles. The audience was feasting. Every time Greg cracked another one-liner, the crowd erupted. Heads turned, people laughed, and Crockett's performance slipped further into disaster. What was meant to be her show of strength became an example of what happens when a viral-style politician collides with real pushback. And the funniest part? Greg didn't even need to hammer her down with anger. His smirk, his timing, his sharp little jabs that was enough to turn her grandstanding into a live train wreck. By the end, the room wasn't inspired. It wasn't moved. It was laughing at her, not with her. The longer it dragged on, the clearer it became. Crockett wasn't just losing, she was being exposed. Every line she threw out was another reminder that her brand is built on noise, not results. Greg made sure to underline that point by turning the spotlight on her record. For all her energy and theatrics, she had no landmark bills, no big legislative wins, nothing of substance to back up the performance. He compared her to a reality show contestant, someone who mistakes chaos for charisma. Sure, that might win Instagram fan pages and trending hashtags, but it doesn't move the country forward. And when you peel away the TikTok-ready tantrums, what's left? Nothing. Just recycled talking points delivered louder and louder. Even her fellow Democrats, according to the panel, seemed unsure how to handle her. Some laughed, some stayed silent, but no one jumped in to defend the cotton-picking remarks or her attack on Byron Donald's marriage. It was as if they knew she had crossed a line but didn't dare say it out loud. Greg's breakdown made it crystal clear. Crockett had confused being viral with being valuable. And in the world of politics, that confusion doesn't just make you look weak, it makes you dangerous to your own cause. What she thought was a victory lap turned into a reminder that when the cameras turn off, leaders are judged by their work, not their outbursts. The bigger picture here was impossible to ignore. Greg turned the clash into a warning for every politician chasing social media fame instead of real results. He showed exactly what happens when flashy soundbites meet, hard pushback, every hole in the argument gets exposed. And it wasn't just about Crockett. It was about a whole new wave of lawmakers who confuse likes and retweets with leadership, who think going viral is the same as making change. Greg's dismantling made it clear. The country is tired of theatrics. People want solutions, not TikTok tantrums. And here's the part that really hurt her image. Instead of sparking applause or sympathy, she walked away with stunned silence and online memes mocking her every move. Greg didn't just defeat her arguments, he exposed the gap between what she thinks she is and what everyone else sees. By the end, Crockett was still swinging, but her punches weren't landing. She even doubled down, saying Democrats could only win elections by throwing hands, calling out names like Ted Cruz and joking about knocking him over the head. But instead of coming across as tough, it looked unhinged, like a desperate attempt to claw back attention after being dismantled. Her buzzwords systemic oppression, voice of the people. Let me finish spilled out rapid fire, but they carried no weight. Greg barely reacted, leaning back with that same unimpressed smirk, almost daring her to keep going. It was like watching someone try to put out a grease fire by yelling at it loud, messy, but completely useless. Meanwhile, the audience was living for the spectacle. Every sarcastic jab from Greg felt like a gut punch to her credibility, and the laughter only grew louder. What was supposed to be her bold political stand had turned into a live comedy show at her expense. And here's the part that really hurt her image. Instead of sparking applause or sympathy, she walked away with stunned silence and online memes mocking her every move. Greg didn't just defeat her arguments, he exposed the gap between what she thinks she is and what everyone else sees. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Also, drop your thoughts in the comments. See you on the next one.